All right, everybody, welcome back to the Jim Feist Handicapping Show, live here at Dom DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar. My name is Tommy Canale. I'm the host and been the host all along with my good friend here, Jim Feist. We've been talking football and recently March Madness, and next week we'll get a little bit into the Masters. Jim, how you been this week?
You know, I said last week, I opened the show, I said I've lost 5 of the last 6 days.
Okay, did you get better?
So that was last week.
Okay.
Now this week, I've won every day since.
There we go.
And had a monster week.
Awesome.
It's just awesome. And I'm ready for the Final Four. I've had a couple plays in the new thing here.
The Crown. We're going to get into that in the NIT.
Yeah. Although I don't have anything today. And but I have a couple baseball games, first fives.
All right.
When I bet the first fives, it's mostly because of the pitchers.
Sure.
Because I don't have to deal with the bullpens mostly. So we got a pro here with
We
us
do.
today.
We do. We got.
That I watch. He walks in here. I don't know him, right? But I see him every day because I watch his show every day.
So you think like you
so
know
I
him.
feel like I know him.
We got Tim Murray with us, the host of VSiN Prime. He was part of a nationally syndicated morning show on SB Nation Radio, play-by-play broadcaster in minor league baseball. Tim, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you guys having me. This is fun.
Yeah. We're gonna get into some stuff, and we're gonna get into the Final Four. But first, I want to talk about this because the amount of coaches that I have talked to that have blown my phone up, and you even text me on this same damn thing. I want to go back to the Calipari coaching against Texas Tech and Grant McCasland. I have done so much breakdown on this, it's crazy. And you actually messaged me and said, did Calipari blow it? So I want to throw out where I think, and then Tim, I want to get your thoughts on this. This goes back for me a long ways. It goes back to Calipari with Memphis and not fouling Kansas, and Chalmers hits the 3 when he could have won the national championship. The game should have never been into overtime because he didn't foul then. But everybody's asking me about this going to the bank with the timeout. But forget about the timeout. He should have fouled up 3, right?
You're asking me, yes. There's something about the coaches feel like it's disrespectful or something to do that. I don't know what it is, because logically and mathematically, you're supposed to make the foul.
Exactly.
Don't let them shoot the damn 3. You know, so I don't know. It's a whole different mentality. I would never do what they do.
Yeah,
Tim?
The Arkansas game was fascinating to me because Arkansas is not a very good free throw shooting team. And there was about 12 seconds to go when Williams hits the 3 for Texas Tech. So it gets into the discussion for me of how much time is left before you make the foul.
Right.
So there's a lot of nuance there. I actually was on the side of Cal there, not fouling with about 12 seconds to go. I mean, it was a great shot by Williams. He had been struggling all game. He hits the 3. But I'll go back around, and I thought Tommy Lloyd for Arizona, who has gotten his fair share of criticism, was unbelievable at the end of the game against Oregon. They never allowed Oregon to have any shot to tie that game. Now, the difference is Arizona had an ace in the hole that did not miss free throws. Mm-hmm. And Arkansas, not a great free throw shooting team. So if there was 4 seconds to go, I'd be all in on what the hell was Cal doing. With 12 seconds to go, because it was a possession.
There was enough time. That is
working the science. I'm curious when you need to foul, and at that point in that Arkansas game, if he should have fouled. And then the timeout conversation's a fascinating one too, because if you remember during the regular season, Rick Barnes, they hit a game-winning 3. I think it was Zakai Ziegler, it might have been Chaz Lanier, but they hit a game-winning 3, and Barnes didn't see it because he was trying to hunt down a ref to get a timeout. Right. So it's like there's a. I think what Cal messed up on is that as that play was unfolding, it was going nowhere. Remember, they had it was like a 20-footer with a hand in it. It was a terrible shot.
Yeah, it was.
So I think as a coach, and it's easy for us to say as we sit here at a lovely restaurant as opposed to on the sidelines of the NCAA tournament.
Under all that pressure.
But I think he should have saw how that play was unfolding, and that's when he should have used the timeout. I think, was it Matt Painter? I think Painter did something like that earlier in the tournament, somewhere where he called a timeout. There was a coach who recognized, all right, the play's not going anywhere. Let's call a timeout. Let's reassess here. So I think there's something to be said about letting him play it out, but there's also something to be said, I've got a timeout. This play's not going anywhere. Let's use it here and regroup.
Cal's gotten a lot of criticism over the years.
Sure.
I mean, he had all those great athletes at Kentucky,
Yep.
the one and done guys. They're freshmen and then they're in the pros. That seemed like when you can't keep your players for a couple of years. I always thought he was being too criticized too much. Because if you can't keep the guys there, I don't know how you can build a team.
I think this year is a fascinating dynamic for Cal because you get all this money, you have all this NIL, you are backed by Tyson Chicken, you're backed by Walmart, you're backed by Jerry Jones, you got all this money, and you start 0-5 in the SEC. You lose your most talented player in Boogie Fland, and now everyone's saying what a bust this is a disaster, and he regroups his team.
And he does that every year.
And gets him in the NCAA tournament. And they beat the darling that is St. John's.
But he never gets any credit from it.
I know. Right. It's easy to criticize Cal I'm sure he wouldn't say this, but most people who know the sport, he's not an X's and O's genius, but he's not a dummy. I think he gets pushed too far and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. All he could do is recruit. Well, he's clearly an elite motivator because to have a team that has that much NIL money, be 0-5 in the SEC, have pros like Edu Thero and guys like this. I mean, Boogie Fland came back. He wasn't all that effective.
No, he wasn't.
But that's a first-round pick. He could have said, I'm good, coach. I got my money. I'm going to go to the NBA.
Yeah.
And he came back. So I think Cal does deserve a lot of credit. And I know, I was hearing, I think it was Gary Parrish of CBS talking about his time at Kentucky, and something that was a bit off-putting to Kentucky fans was that he was all about, I'm getting these guys to the next level. I'm going to go make them millionaires.
Yeah, exactly.
And Big Blue Nation was more of the mindset, whoa, we're Kentucky. We want you to be, ingrained here,
And they want Final Fours and Elite Eights.
But when you're walking into a household and you're telling a mom and a dad, I'm going to make your son a millionaire, they're like, where do we sign up, right? And that's why he was able to get a lot of these athletes.
Good sales pitch.
And a lot of these players, I'm sure there are some disgruntled ones, but a lot of these players swear by him, right? Love him to death. So I think Cal, sometimes the pendulum swings too much on a lot of topics, and I think that's one where he's not this jabroni coach. Like, he knows what he's doing, and I actually think he deserves a little bit more credit than maybe he got to get this team to the Sweet 16. When you start 0-5, you had all this preseason expectations, and now you're kind of building on that heading into next year down there in Fayetteville.
So here's the thing that I went through with a lot of coaching friends of mine, and they asked me back when I was coaching, what would you have done? And I said, okay, let me back up. Coaches, you either practice fouling up three, or you don't practice fouling up three. And if you don't practice it, and you foul up three, there's a good chance you're not going to get the rebound and understand the game and situation. My teams, we practice up three. The majority of the coaches I've talked to all practice up three these days. To foul up three to save it. They don't not practice it. The whole time
They do practice to foul up three.
Correct. And we run the situations, fouling up three, every scenario you can find, so the kids understand what they're supposed to do. The timeout situation, I always go on feel. I can back Cal on that because I'm looking at, if I call this timeout to set up a play, I'm giving the guy on the other side a chance to set up a defense and a chance to switch a defense, or maybe throw a trap into me, or throw up at a zone and first pass switch into a man, and my kids are panicking because I'm trying to set something up for a last play, and I'm giving this guy a chance in a dead ball situation to go strategy with me and chess match me. So I get it if you're going to or not call the timeout. If you're not going to call it, then you need to have a play in the hole that you can call, that they can go to immediately, that they understand, because that shot they got just wasn't good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love, as a former player, I love watching, these coaches and the brilliance that they have. And it's not just them. Their staffs are deep now, and there's so much X's and O's, but like the end of the Houston-Purdue game that inbounds play. Now, you could argue that shouldn't have ever happened because maybe he pushed off, but regardless, you get 2 seconds left and you draw up this play. Sampson or one of his assistants, whether it's his son, whoever it was, the brilliance of that play where they knew that Purdue was going to run out to the three-point line and set up an opportunity to bring it back in. And you could just see Matt Painter go, oh, bleep, here we go. Wide open.
The best thing...
Sampson said that is not a play you call at that moment. We practice that
correct.
all the time. And he told his staff, don't call anything new. Let's use what we practiced.
Well, you know what I love about that whole thing?
It was beautiful the way it worked.
Yeah.
The whole interview, the one thing he said that really lit me up is when he said, that was our second option.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, which tells me, he said, we looked to the corner and they took it away, and we went to the second option, which was the inbounder, which tells me his kids were so well in tune to that play that they went, A's not there, let's go to B. Because sometimes
that's great coaching.
Great coaching, because sometimes kids only know A and they panic and go, okay, we'll just pull it out. No, but his kids didn't.
And we're going to talk about that as we go forward into the Final Four, because some of these coaches are older, more experienced, have been there, and had some players like with Houston. They have a player that was on the championship team with Baylor.
LJ Brown.
I mean, that's big.
Yep.
And
so let's
now they're a 6-point dog.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
So let's start there with Houston Duke. We got 4 coaches. None of them have a national championship. Somebody's going to get one on Monday night. I had this side of the bracket right. I had the other side of the bracket wrong. But this is a monster matchup, a revenge matchup for Houston from the Sweet 16.
That too.
When Shed went down last year and they had that game intact. They pretty much had it in hand and they just could not hold on to it when Shed got hurt. When you look at the coaching matchup between Shire versus Sampson, where I always start looking at it, I have to give the edge to Houston. Well, Kelvin's forgot more than Shire's got right now.
I can't take anything away from Shire. I mean,
no, you can't.
But Sampson's been there a number of times, and now he has some outside shooting. He can score. I mean, they are the best three-point shooting team of the 4 left.
Correct.
I mean, which is not something you could say about them in the past.
And when you look at their defense, it's hard to imagine that they're a 6-point dog. Because they will absolutely suck the life out of you and continue just to try and drain you. But what Duke can counter is Duke has an inside presence that Houston's going to have a problem with. And I think Duke's much deeper than Houston is. It's going to be an interesting matchup to see how it goes. I think if this game stays in the 50s and 60s, it plays to Houston's favor.
Oh, totally.
If Duke can do what they did to Alabama and get out to that fast start and make them chase, this game's going to get over.
Well, Alabama couldn't hit a shot.
That's part of Duke's defense too.
You can't do that. You can't if you depend that much on the 3-point shot and you're giving up the rebounds and the fast breaks, you're dead. Mm-hmm. Because if Duke gets to 70, they're probably dead. They're not going to make it. You can't keep them. You can't let them get to 70.
You like this game at all?
I love this game.
What side?
I love the game just the matchup standpoint. I am going to be on Houston. I have not bet it yet because I don't think there's a real race to bet it. I think the public right now is infatuated, understandably so, with Duke.
They are.
Look, I bet Duke in the Elite Eight. It was more of a, what did we see with Alabama lately? And I thought there would be regression, but it was also, to your point, it's also their defense and how long they are. Mm-hmm. And the guards, Mark Sears is 6'1" with flats on, right? He's not a tall guy. He's an elite shooter. He's a great playmaker, but the size and the length of Duke. And I think that's what was underrated about Duke until now, which is we knew that you have Con Knippel, you've got Cooper Flagg, you've got these elite offensive playmakers. But I think what was underrated until now was the fact that this is an elite defensive team. And Malawak, I thought, was the absolute star of the Elite Eight. I mean, what he does at 7'2" to move at his, laterally, he could play with guards, which is just something you don't see all that often. So the defense is fascinating. I think, to your point about the total, I think it's 136, I think is where we're at right now.
Yep.
I could look under there. I mean, it's a little bit nerve-wracking when you look at a Duke team that put up 100 just the other day against Arizona, 85 against Alabama. But I think this is, you're paying an enormous tax on Duke. And could they win and cover? Of course they could.
Sure.
That this team they've got 3 lottery picks. And then I think what Shire did so exceptionally well was, look, you're Duke. You can get anybody in the portal you want. But he went out and he got a Sion James from Tulane. He got a Gillis from Purdue. He didn't have to go get the huge name guys. He wanted guys that could fit my three superstars in Flagg, Knipple, and Malawak. So the roster construction is tremendous. But to your point, what you alluded to is you got grown-ass men on Houston, and you've got younger kids who seem to be ready for the moment. There's no doubt, but
and Flagg keeps answering the bell every single game.
Flagg should be a high school senior.
Exactly.
He reclassified. He should be in high school right now.
And the thing about Duke that still to this day, as you look from the second half of the season, they've been the only team that's been in the top 5 in KenPom for offense and defense efficiency. And now I think people kind of overlook that, but now they brought it to the forefront. As you mentioned,
the Alabama game, I think opened people's eyes like, holy crap, they can play this good defense. Like, yeah. But I'll say this as a caveat: if you're looking to bet Houston, Duke has not played an elite defense like this since early on in the year. They played some elite defenses early. They played Auburn earlier on in the year. They played at Kansas here in Las Vegas. The best defensive team they've played over the past 2 or so months is Clemson, and they lost that game on the road. So, there's something to be said, too, a little bit about game pressure. And I think there's also something to be said if you're looking to back Houston. Houston's road was the hardest road any team had to face heading into the Final Four. Their second-round team in Gonzaga is a top 10 KenPom team. It was ridiculous that they were an 8 seed.
Exactly.
And they held on. I mean, the score to me, and I know Battle had a 3 late in that game to try to tie it. The score was a little bit misleading. I thought Houston kind of kept them at arm's length majority of the game. And then you turn around, you have to go to Indianapolis to play Purdue, who, I mean, Braden Smith, there's rumors out there he's getting offered like $4 million from some schools to come in the portal. I mean, his playmaking just as a pure point guard is something unmatched, and something that's going to get overlooked was because of the great inbounds play from Houston. I thought the possession that he ran prior to get that 3 in the corner.
In the corner?
Oh my gosh. Drew the defense, kicked to the corner.
And not only that, Tim, but that pass was on the money.
Of course, right in the pocket.
Exactly.
I mean,
he didn't miss it.
He is a kind of a throwback player where he's just a true point guard. And then you play Tennessee and you're able to dominate that game. So I love this matchup. I'm glad it's the last game of the night of the two. And
it really comes down to pace.
Yeah.
And if they
Houston, I think, is around 360 in tempo.
You
they are.
can't let this team get away from you.
No doubt.
You're
No,
dead.
you can't. And I've been saying for a while, I've been waiting for a team, and maybe it just can't happen. If there's a coach that can do it, it's Sampson. And that is to get into Cooper Flagg early and try and frustrate this kid and not let him get into a rhythm. Because nobody's been able to do that yet. He's been able to kind of get into his own guard and take off what he wants to do.
I mean, the scary thing about Duke, though, is that he was not great against Alabama, and they won by 20.
That's true.
I mean, Con Knipple stepped up, and he had 25 and 5. I mean, they've had Cooper Flagg and Knipple go in back-to-back games 25 and 5. So, I mean, these two guys, they're both freshmen. They don't look.
Well,
like
look what they did in the ACC tournament without Flagg and Brown.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, the ACC.
They're deep.
The Duke is deep, and it was funny because someone on Twitter, which is always a lovely place, so many kind people on there. Someone said to me, because I was talking crap about the ACC and how bad it was this year, and someone said, well, they could have the national champion. I'm like, two things can be true. Duke is elite, and Duke is I think they are the best team in the country. Now, will they win on Saturday? That's TBD. But you can have the best team in the country, and you can also suck as a conference. And I think the proof is in the pudding when you see Louisville lose basically a home game to Creighton. You see Clemson get, let's be honest, that score against McNeese.
They got blown out early.
They hit threes late.
You could go back to the team you mentioned that Houston had played.
Yeah, Gonzaga.
Gonzaga. I mean, that's a really, really good team in a very weak conference.
Yeah. St. Mary's let me down again. couldn't hit water if they fell out of the boat. But no, I can't wait for that game. I mean, there was a 5.5. Obviously, we were here in Vegas. DraftKings is not eligible to be bet for us. So 5's here in town. But I think this guy's like every Saturday I have Chuck Esposito from Stations on my show. I'm getting 75, 80% people are going to be on Duke, if not more. So I'm wondering, with the plethora of public money that will start to come into the market come Saturday, I mean, will we get a 5.5? I don't know if we'll get to 6, but
I'd love to see 6.
Oh my God! But I think there's if I had to guess, and Jim, you could speak to this more so than I, because I'm just a jabroni. But I would imagine the sharps are waiting to see what number are we going to get. I don't know if there's a necessary race to take to take Houston right now.
There's not a sharp in the world that wouldn't take 6.
Of course.
That's for sure. I mean, I don't know that we'll get the 6. I got the 6 because I bought a half point.
Right.
Because I knew if I saw 5.5, I'm going to do that. If it gets to 6 naturally, I'll bet it. I'll probably bet it again.
Yep.
And if it ever went higher, which is ridiculous, but there is a possibility Duke gets away with this thing and runs. If they run away with it, you're not going to catch it.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? It's we can wait for numbers and we can hope to get the best in the number, and it might just be UConn again. I mean,
it could
be.
The
fact that UConn 2 straight years not only won the national title but covered every single game.
Right.
There have been plenty of us who have tried to get cute, come in on the other side. I know I've done that on whatever team it is. But I'm going to do that here. I just, Ken Palm's not the gospel, but his numbers come out to 2. Like, I'm sure, Jim, all the pro guys that you talk to, numerically, you can't get to 5 on this game.
No, I make it 1.5, 2.
Right.
And I have 7 different ratings, my own. And then I look at the other 3 guys that are out there, and the one is Tarvik, and the other, I can't remember the name.
Bart Torvik, yeah.
But there's one of them actually makes Houston the favorite.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at 1, 1.5, and then the others, and I'm looking at my own numbers, I cannot get to this number.
Now, one thing I'll say about this game, and there's going to be a lot of people, you mentioned last year Houston against Duke in the Sweet 16, and Jamal Shed getting hurt, or a couple years ago when they played Villanova in the Elite Eight and they could not hit anything, right? This is a very different Houston team. This is a team that you mentioned this, Jim. They're number 1 in the country in 3-point shooting percentage. Right. So they can shoot. This is not St. John's.
And it's not just one guy.
No. They've got guys that can shoot.
They got guys.
Look, sometimes you have bad shooting nights. LJ Cryer was awful in the Sweet 16, right? He was incredible in the second round. A big reason why they beat Gonzaga and why they beat them with comfort. But in the second round, you're thinking, oh my God. But then he had Uzan step up, who was just phenomenal in the win over Purdue. So look, I think this of the 2, I know Auburn and Florida's been playing exceptionally well. When I saw this matchup and the possibility that could go, this was my projected, Final Four. Congratulations, you picked 2 1 seeds to play each other. Way to go! But I just think that to me, this is the one that I'm most looking forward to of the 2 games this weekend.
Of the other game, that we do have all 4 1 seeds.
We do.
The other game with Brown, is that how you say it? Brown?
Johnny.
Broom.
Broom.
Janae Broom.
I mean, we don't know. I mean, he is a major.
Okay,
factor.
look, here's the thing. Here's my take on that. Even they're saying he's going to play. The thing I saw this morning
is
is
play 1-armed or 2.
Expect Gianni Broom to play. Okay, he's going to play. There's no way in hell he's 100%. And even he has to be 100% for me for Auburn to have a chance with this, because he is the only shot to try and offset what Florida is going to do on the inside with that size and that length. And if he's playing with one arm, regardless, I know this was a close game when they met in the regular season, but they have to have him at full speed, I think, to have any shot in this, because Golden is going to take advantage of it. And let's face the facts. That one arm is going to get hit. It's going to get banged. Somebody's going to twist it, hit it, grab it, pull it, and then we're going to find out how long he can last. And if he doesn't last,
matter how much drugs they can give him.
They're going to wear off, though.
They're definitely going to shoot him up. There's no question about it. They're going to shoot him up as much as they can to get him to play.
Well, you're a former player.
What
do you think?
I just don't see Auburn healthy. I'd like Auburn this game with his injury. And I'll say this on record. Of the 4 coaches, and it'll probably be Golden that wins it, I hope he gets hit by a bus before they get to the Final Four. I am not a Golden fan at all.
Well, I'm not going to mention, but I'm going to go to our guest here. You played.
I did. Not at the level of these guys, but yes.
But very few people have. But what do you think about this injury? He could, even if he comes back and he's only partially there.
Yeah.
Even if he only can play defense and not effectively offense, he's still a rim protector.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a tough guy.
Oh yeah, I think his toughness was on display in the Elite Eight, right? He leaves the court, he goes back to the locker room, comes back out, grabs a one-on rebound and hits a 3. Like, he's definitely a tough dude. Hyperextended his knee earlier in the season, missed 2 games? We thought he might miss a month, might miss, we talked a lot about it on VSiN, the Wooden Award odds, because they shifted drastically, because the thought was, he would be out a month and probably would be done, and then he came back in 2 games. So the game that I know I will be on is I will be on Houston. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet in this game. Now, I'm thinking
It's at 2.5, I think.
with the familiarity, maybe a first half under. I think that's 76.5. You know, obviously the sight lines we played up. This is going to be played at the Alamo Dome, so it's always kind of a unique thing. It's the first game of the 2. So I could see myself maybe a first half under as a bit of a play there. But and I'll say this: Florida has obviously gotten off to some slow starts, right? They were sluggish against UConn, only up 2 against Maryland. You know, let's be honest, they should have lost to Texas Tech, but give them credit. I thought, you know, going back to coaching, Todd Golden, brilliant decision. He fouls 1-1 just under 3 minutes to go, puts the pressure on Texas Tech. What happens? They choke. They miss both front ends.
Yep.
They hit threes, and now we've got a tie ball game in a blink of an eye. And there's something, and I know from an analytical standpoint, it's hard to kind of quantify it, but there's something about Walter Clayton Jr. that guy just has, you know, excuse my language, he's just got balls. Like, he just steps up.
As Rafferty would say, he's got onions.
I mean, that dude
He's got big onions.
No fear at all.
And that's the cool thing about what we're going to have this weekend. I know everyone's going, oh, the Cinderellas are missing. I don't really care about that. I would have loved to see a little more dog bite. I think all of us would have. The first round was, from a betting standpoint, pretty rough for me. But
all of us.
Yeah.
That was part of the 5 out of 6 days losing.
But I love the fact that here we are, and you look at, you know, I know we've referenced it a bunch. Since KenPom came into existence in the late 90s, we have 4 of the top 10 teams all time in his database playing this weekend. These 4 teams, I believe, from the KenPom metrics, are all better than the teams that played last year in the NCAA in the Final Four.
Wow.
So we got elite teams playing, and that's what I think is so fascinating about these games. Obviously, Auburn's played all 3 of these teams, which is kind of fascinating. Remember the infamous plane fight situation that happened earlier in the year with Auburn. So they get on Houston. So, but back to where I'm on in this game and the Broom situation, I think he's going to be fine. I just.
Well, you know he's going to be out there.
He's going to play.
He's a warrior.
There's no way he's not playing.
Yeah,
he's a 5th
play.
year senior, started at Morehead State. I mean, and that's also the kind of cool thing about this, right? You've got different pieces. You know, Cooper Flagg is one of the greatest prospects maybe ever, right, that we've seen. And he's lived up to it at this point. He's going to win the Wooden Award. And then you've got a guy like Janae Broom, who started at Morehead State. And now here he is. You've got a guy like Walter Clayton Jr., who started at Iona. And those are the 3 best players in the Final Four.
Yep.
And they all have had some unique different paths. They're all elite, and they're all going to be on the biggest stage on Saturday night.
Jim, have you heard this from the Sharps? I've heard that the Sharps are really looking at taking the team total on Florida in this game.
To do what?
To take the Florida team total over in this game. Have you heard that from the Sharps?
Well, I have not, but I disagree with it.
You like the under with Florida?
Well, let me tell you
team
what
total under?
First of all, I think Broom is very important. And whether he plays 100%, 80%, 70%, I know he's going to be on the field, on the floor, and he's going to be a defensive presence, even if he can't play offense with one arm. He is going to be a rim protector. I feel we have 2 very experienced coaches in the 4. We have 2 other coaches that are very good, but we have 2 very experienced coaches. Auburn knows that they can't get in a fly up and down the floor with this, especially with an injured star.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I feel they're going to have to control pace. Both games should be under, whether you bet the first half under and the full game under. I like both games under. That takes a lot of the mystery out of me about what his condition's going to be, because I do think he's going to be able to play the full game defensively. I don't know if he's going to be effective offensively if he has one arm. I mean, that's going to be a different situation, but he can protect the rim, and I think they'll slow the pace. I think they have to slow the pace. They're not going to be able to keep up any kind of pace if this kid is hurt.
So let me ask you this before we transition away from the NCAA. Who you got playing Monday night and who's winning it?
I think Houston wins the game straight up. You don't even need the 6 points, but I got the 6 points.
It's nice to have the 6
All right,
points.
so you got-
I like that cushion.
You got Houston.
I
Who
like
you got in the other
cushion.
game?
The other game is going to really depend on the kid, and I just don't know what to do with it. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know what to say because I don't know what his condition is. I mean, I like the under, but the side, without knowing what his condition is, I really don't know what to say.
I've been saying all year.
But I will say this. There's a lot of money to be made live betting, okay?
Yep.
Like I had Michigan State. They lost the game by 6. I had 6, so I pushed it. But in game, in the first few minutes, it was 13.5. I had no problem covering that, okay? So what I'm saying is, if you're a bettor, that's all really I am. So I look for spots like that. It's all about making money. I don't necessarily need to be right up front, as they call pre-flop. I think Gil says that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I like to be right up front, and we obviously would like to win. But in-game betting, that's a gold mine. You just have to set those accounts up and do it.
I've said about a month ago, if there's basketball gods out there in the tournament, they'll give us Auburn and Houston. And I'm sticking to it.
Well, you get the coaches.
I've been waiting for this matchup again in the tournament, Auburn for Houston, so I'm going to stick with it. I said from when the brackets came out, I'm taking Houston, so I'm staying with it.
I think if Auburn's healthy, if the kid can play offensively and defensively and be effective, I think that's a stretch because he's really got hurt.
Yeah.
But if he is healthy like that, I think they do win it.
Who's your pick before I take this question?
Yeah. It feels silly to go against Duke right now, but I am. I'm going to go Houston, and I'm going to go Auburn. We have had, 14 straight favorites win outright, and I think that comes to a close on Saturday. I think finally we get a little dog barking. So, yeah, I will go Auburn. That one I don't feel as great about, the Broom situation.
Right.
I think, especially, too, with a total of 160 and a spread of 2.5, to your point, Jim, in-game betting is the way to go in this one, especially when you've seen Florida get off to their slow starts. I mean, think about the opportunities you could have had with Florida against UConn, against Maryland, and then especially against Texas Tech. And then I'll say this about Auburn. In the Sweet 16, they were down by 9 in the second half to Michigan, and I pulled out the app, and it was, I think, plus 125 on the money line, and then they went on a 20-2 run and ran away and hid from Michigan, and ultimately, I believe, covered the game, too.
Let me ask you about the style.
Yeah.
Connecticut controlled the pace.
Yep.
That bothered the team. Okay. Maryland is not a deep team. They really play 5-6 guys.
Yep.
They controlled the game a lot.
First half, for sure.
Right. So if Auburn can play that style, and if they don't have a player, the Broom out there that can put up 20-25, they're going to have to play that style. That could also affect. That's why I'm saying, even with him not being 100%, and maybe even more so that he's not 100%, it's an underplay.
Yeah. And look, if you just look at, they played previously, it was 90-81. Florida won that game. But now you're on a bigger stage. You're the first game of the Final Four. You're in the Alamo Dome. I would probably be on the under. As I mentioned, I think the play that I will have in pocket right now is first half under. 76.5, I think, is out there. So that's probably the way I'll go initially. And then I think especially the first game, I think is a very good live trading opportunity with a high total, with a short spread. And then the second game, who knows if you're going to be able to get Houston at a better number as the game goes on, especially if they're going to want to slow it down, kind of grind it as they are wont to do.
How about sight lines? You're a player.
Yeah.
How bad are the sight lines at a big stadium like that?
It's not great. Mm-hmm. And when you think back to, and you could argue that Houston has a little bit of an advantage because they played at Lucas Oil, but they put that in an end zone, and they had curtains up, and it was they tried to make that feel like a true arena. This is in the middle of the football field, so we could pack as many people in there. So the sight lines definitely are a concern, and they don't get a ton of time. You heard coaches talking about this. They don't get a ton of practice time on that floor. They get their shoot around, I think, on Friday, and that's pretty much it. And then a shoot around maybe on Saturday. There's a lot more, and that's why I think you think back to the Houston play that they drew up. you get so much time for walkthroughs in your ballrooms, in your hotels,
Yep.
you have tons of time to draw things up, but you don't have a ton of time to shoot on the floor itself, which is tricky.
For sure. Ray, what's your question?
Yeah, I hear a lot of Houston chatter, one
Yeah.
way or the other. And if you guys, everything that you've been saying, your testament from all around the board, 5, whatever, I'm looking at a number right now, and I love Houston. One of my favorite players is on that team. I'm addressing that right now, Juwan Roberts. He's
Yeah.
an animal in the paint. He's the definition of like a Rucker Park, something we haven't seen in a while. He's an animal, and his over/under is 9.5 for points in a game like that. And I just think with him in that paint, if you believe that Houston could win this game, how does this guy not go over the number with the fouls, with everything? I mean, that is definitely a prop that I would like. If I like Houston, even if I didn't like Houston, if over 9.5 points for Juwan Roberts in this game, I think it's, I don't want to say,
Yeah.
but it was pretty damn good.
I mean, I guess the only pushback would be Malawak at the rim, right? You saw Grant Nelson really struggle to get anything going up. He is such a force down low. So,
It was Juwan Roberts.
no, I know, but you can't
Yeah.
teach 7-2.
No, and the other thing too, Ray, the other thing too, Ray, I think you got to take into consideration is Duke's athleticism is much quicker than Roberts. And they'll be able to cover ground on him quicker than he may think there's an opening. He's not a fast player. He's a slow developing move. When he makes his move, he's slower than the average person. And with that length of Duke,
So what you're saying is you can see a game where Houston wins this game and Juwan Roberts has about 8 points?
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Just checking.
Especially if it's a low-scoring game because you're going to cut points way back anyway.
Yep.
So,
Are either one of you on the NIT championship tomorrow night with Chattanooga and UCI Irvine?
That was a good comeback by UCI. I thought North Texas was going to win that one.
So did I.
Yeah, I was
It's
actually
3.5 right
I was
now.
kicking myself initially. I think I don't know these teams as well. I saw UCI in person when they played UC San Diego here in Vegas during the Big West Championship. They got a big, huge plotting center, about 7-1 there. I've been impressed by what I've seen from Chattanooga, so I would probably, if I had to play anything, maybe look towards the dog and the mocks here. But that would be the way I
you're
probably
talking
would
about
go.
straight up? Straight up, I like Irvine.
Well, yeah, the line's 3.5. And I agree with you, Tim, with Chattanooga. They found some kind of magic here in this NIT.
Yeah.
They seem to be playing at a much quicker pace, really trying to disrupt teams. So I think it's an interesting matchup. We're going to have to see how that goes. I've heard Russell's name being mentioned for a couple jobs here, so we'll see if he's got one
Those
foot
are
out
all
the
filling
door.
up, though.
Yeah, they are.
When you
I
look-
just heard now that Texas A&M looking at Chris Beard,
Which would be incredible. To
Brad
think about.
Underwood.
Brad Underwood's an option. Chris Beard's an option.
I mean, it's
when
gonna-
you think about Chris Beard, a Texas alum, and how it all unfolded
Right.
there at Texas, for him to come back and be at Texas A&M, oh man.
After being at Texas Tech.
After being at
it's
Texas
like he made
Tech,
the
after being
complete
at
triangle.
Texas, and then
He's going to cover all the Texas schools.
yeah, and then if Ole Miss opens, and the cycle just kind of never stops. So.
What's your opinion of all this NIL and
NIL?
and all this stuff? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the concept of NIL, I love it, right? You should be able to profit off of you being a
Totally
superstar.
agree.
When you,
Totally.
I don't know if you guys saw the Netflix documentary on Johnny Manziel. But
I did.
It's like that guy wasn't able to profit. I mean, he did
He
illegally,
found a way.
illegally,
Yeah.
but like he should have been able to profit. The problem I have is the tampering and there's no regulation of it, right?
That's
It's
my
It's the
issue.
wild, wild west. There's no cap. So I think what the NCAA did in classic NCAA fashion was just say, just go. Like, we go from 0 to 100 just like that.
With no regulation.
With no regulation. So, I think there's positives. There's a lot of positives, in my opinion, with NIL. I heard, I'm going to reference him again. Gary Parrish talking a story about Donovan Dent.
I was just going to say, do you know what he got at UCLA?
He got like $3 million.
$3 million.
And good for him. He
Yeah.
was a low, I think he was like a 2 or 3 star recruit, went to New Mexico, built up who he is, won Mountain West Player of the Year, and now he's getting to go back to his hometown. He's from Irvine. He's going to play for UCLA. He's going to get $3 million a year. That's tremendous. Like
And sat the bench last year. 'Cause
Right.
He was behind, I can't remember his name, the guard they had last year.
And then, so I think there's I would say overall the positives outweigh the negatives, but yeah, we need to get to some point of regulating this thing, because then you have the rumors, like I mentioned, and you don't know how true they are, but smart people are mentioning it, like Braden Smith of Purdue is getting offered upwards of $4 million to leave.
Cooper Flagg got offered 10.
Right. I mean, it's wild.
Come back.
Okay, we're talking, that's the nil. What about the portal, which is a different animal?
Yep.
These kids, they pick up some money. I don't know how much they get, but they go from one school to the next, and then you do the year, and then you transfer again. So every year you can transfer and pick up 20, 30, whatever money you can get.
Yep.
You would think there'd be some kind of contract or something to say, okay, you can do this, but you got to stay for 2 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, once again, though, I think what the players will say, well, that coach can leave whenever he wants.
Well, maybe that's got to stop too.
Right. So, and that's something that I know Jay Billis has harped on a while. I would say I'm in favor of the portal. I always like the grad transfer, because as much as it's BS, at the end of the day, they are student athletes, right? So I always thought, hey, if you graduate, that's your ultimate goal at the school you go to, so you should be able to leave whenever you want. So I always was in favor of the grad transfer. I think maybe we're at the point where you're allowed one kind of mulligan, because look, you get told you're going to be a superstar at Kentucky and you're not. Well, you shouldn't be stuck at Kentucky riding the bench. You should be able to go to Murray State and flourish and help out your own stock. And then on the flip side, John A. Broome or Walter Clayton, or a lot of these pieces who start at the mid-major level and they've exceeded their expectations. And, there was a mid-major coach that I was talking to last year. His best player won Conference Player of the Year, and that player came into his office and he was like, you got to go. He knew what the offers were. He's like, what am I going to do? I can't match that, and it's better for you, and you make the money you can make now.
It's only fair. It's only fair to the kids that they can make, and they don't all come from a lot of money. Some of them really need. The families need money. I mean, it's the hard out there.
Well, and you saw, it's on the women's side, but like Olivia Miles from Notre Dame, she was projected to be the second pick in the WNBA. She's going to stay in college because she's going to make more money in NIL.
Is that right?
Yeah. She's going to probably make north of $1 million, I would imagine. And her roster, her salary in the WNBA would be, I think, under $100,000. So
well, you got to take the money.
Yeah.
I think there are, if you look at it in some standpoints, there are a lot of positives about NIL. Now, the players moving around, it's tricky to kind of know who's on what team, but there's a lot. Hunter Dickinson, not my favorite player. I think he complained a lot, but regardless, you knew who he was. He was in college basketball for 5 years because he is a unique player, probably doesn't project to being much of anything in the NBA, but I would imagine Kansas was paying him $2-3 million.
Easy.
Make that money, man.
Easy.
So it's kind of unique in that regard. Where
consider that a lot of people work their whole life.
I'm still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for to get some of that money.
Are you watching The Crown?
No, I haven't been watching the games because now I'm looking at baseball and stuff. So I do the stats. I have a whole stat page that I look at. Like today, I didn't play a game. I didn't play anybody because the stats came out with the numbers, and if there's no edge, I don't have to bet.
I get it.
If I have an edge, I bet.
I love this concept of this tournament. I just think it's 2 weeks too late.
Yeah.
These guys are out of shape. The rhythm is off. The teams are off. A good friend of mine who's a Division I coach texted me yesterday and said, are you watching the glorified open gym called The Crown in Las Vegas? Well, I'm like, that is a perfect scenario. What are you telling me we're looking at? Because that's what it is.
And that's what I almost never blindly bet anything, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have fun with it. It's going to be, I think it was like a quarter unit, but I put an over on all 8 of the games. Did you see these totals? They moved like 10 points from open because that was my expectation. And now I'm not going to do it moving forward because, to your point, these guys are getting a little bit more in shape. Yeah. You've made it to the quarters.
Now they mean more.
Now it means more. Right. You're one round away from getting NIL money because remember, the champion gets $300,000. I think the runner-up gets $100, and then the two semis get 50.
Yeah.
So now you're close to money. Now the defense is going to pick up a little bit more. But if you play the opener, I think you went 6-2 to the over. If you played the closing number, I think it was 5-3 to the over. So it wasn't a massive win. But yeah, you saw a couple of these games. They were just go.
Yeah.
Just have fun.
Yeah.
DePaul looked like they hadn't picked up a basketball since they stopped playing.
Right.
they were gassed early. I'm like,
Well,
what happened to this team?
Well, and the trickle down was funny because I bet, God, I can't remember who it was. It was the NIT, and I had taken whoever Oklahoma State was playing in the first round. It was some mid-major. And I had turned on the broadcast, and I've got like plus 4.5 or something like that. And they go, all these guys had left. They have not practiced in a week. I'm like, oh, great. This is great. It did not work out well. I think Oklahoma won by like
I think if
6 or 7.
they move the crown up a couple weeks or
Yeah.
10 days, it'd be much better. So before we close,
Well, not talk about negatives. We're talking about a sport that we all bet and we love. And then the coaches are moving during the tournaments,
Yeah.
and I mean,
it reminds me a lot of
it's
bowl
like-
season, right?
It's like who's running this asylum?
And look, I'm from Maryland. I'm not a Maryland fan, but and there's no easy way to do it. But I thought what Kevin Willard did that week was an absolute disgrace. I mean, look, I'm not arguing that Villanova is a worse job. If you want to leave to go back to the Northeast, to be closer to family, to play in a conference that you're more familiar with, as a Seton Hall guy, I totally understand that. But there's got to be a way. I mean, look, I give Will Wade all the credit in the world. Now, you can't do that in Maryland, but he was basically telling everyone, I'm leaving.
Yep.
And he told his players, I'm leaving.
He was up front.
Because a lot of those players are going to go with him
Yeah.
or get another opportunity. You can't really do that in Maryland, which I totally understand. But he goes out on record. He blasts his AD before they play Grand Canyon.
that's not a good. That
And
was
then
not
they
good.
win, but it was a disaster the whole week. And I had friends of mine who weren't even excited. It was the first time Maryland had been in the Sweet 16 in a decade, and they weren't even excited for the game because of this whole Kevin Willard situation. It reminded me a little bit, and I'm a Notre Dame fan, of when Brian Kelly left
Good
Notre
point.
Dame to go to LSU.
That's a
where
great
it just
analogy.
kind of just came out of nowhere, and he just kind of went dead silent, and then boom, he's the head coach of somewhere else. But yeah, it's the wild, wild west. I'm excited. A buddy of mine is coming back into the coaching ranks. He just got hired today up at Bryant, so I'm excited for him. But it's crazy, man. You move around.
Oh, is that Christensen?
Jamie and Christian? Yeah.
Yeah.
He went from he was like the ascending coach, and then he got fired from George Washington. He ended up coaching in Italy. He kind of went the Patino route.
Yeah.
He coached in the Euro League, won a championship last year, and now he's coming over to Bryant. So I'm happy for him.
Before we close shop, catch me up on what's going on in the MLB with you. You making some money?
Just bet the Dodgers every day, right?
7-0.
Do we need a ticket like Dodgers are going to go 162-0?
And the Braves go 0-162.
Well, the Padres,
Padres are
will the
undefeated.
Padres and Dodgers both be undefeated when they play each other?
That's a good.
In September.
Yeah, whatever.
No, well, I'm looking. You look at the starting pitchers. You know that in most cases they're not going to go beyond 5. Although Evaldi pitched the whole game the other day, which was incredible. This time of the year for that to happen. Pitched a great game, awesome. But if you're playing the starting pitchers, all the prices are made by starting pitchers. You just bet the first 5 innings. It's that simple. If you're going to go beyond 5 innings, then you got to know what the hell the bullpens are doing and who's available. I mean, it's just everything changes. Nothing ever stays the same. Whether it's nil or portal or baseball or the bats. What do they call the
Torpedo bats.
Yeah.
I mean, everything changes, and you gotta evolve and with it, and you gotta be flexible in everything, in life, in sports, in whatever you do. You just have to be flexible.
Well, you brought up a great point, because this show, you got to be flexible, because after next week, we're no longer going to be here at Dom DeMarco's. Next week is our last show at Dom DeMarco's.
No, for this period.
For this period.
But
We'll be
we
back
will be back in August.
for football, but you're going to continue this show at home.
Dom DeMarco's is going to sponsor my show from my house.
Okay.
Okay. And we're going to do the same thing, except it's going to be out of my house. A lot less expense, of course, to do that. And sorry, because we're not, not having equipment.
Right.
Just do it on a laptop.
Sure.
So we're going to have, StreamYard in the guests and stuff. And whether it's 2 or 3 people every week, we might do 1 or 2 shows. Because I do baseball, I'm constantly into WNBA. I can't wait for it to start. I made a fortune with WNBA last year, and I'm looking forward to it. And then, of course, there's golf, I mean, we've got some guys out there picking 35 to 1, 110 to 1.
Wes Reynolds.
My God, does he ever lose?
He's hey, he's the guest next week.
I know this guy doesn't lose. He picks these
perfect guy before the Masters.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into the Masters next week. We'll recap the NCAA championship. We'll talk a little baseball, and then we'll get this transition to your house. But one more week here at Dom's. I think this is week 26, so we've been doing this a half a year now.
The only thing is, when you hear me from my house, you're going to have to put up with the dogs because they do bark and they're very large.
Well, hopefully they're barking on Saturday for all three of us.
That's right. My name is Tommy Canale. He is Jim Feist. Give it up for Tim Murray, everybody. Thank you for coming out to Dom DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar. We'll see you one more time next week until August here at Dom's at noon. Good luck on your bets and enjoy the games this weekend, everybody.
I'd watch you all the time, so I know what to expect.